All right, so I will now call to order the March 29th, 2022 meeting of the Historic Review Board. First, we will ask if there are any public comments for items not on the agenda this evening. Hearing that there are no public comments I will now move to the public hearing portion of the agenda. So there is one public hearing on land use applications scheduled tonight. Our role is to conduct the public hearing and to make decisions about the matter before us. In making those decisions, we must apply the applicable codes and laws and cannot vary from or change those laws or codes. Members of the Historic Review Board are to be unbiased. Before the start of the hearing, I will ask the Historic Review Board members whether or not they have any potential conflicts, such as family, financial, or business relationships with any of the applicants or with regard to the land in question. I will also ask whether any of the Historic Review Boarders have discussed the application in question with any of the parties or have independent knowledge or relevant facts, such as from a visit to the site in question. Any member of the audience may question any Historic Review Boarder about their disclosures. A staff report has been prepared for each application and has been made available to the public 7 days before the first public hearing. The staff report identifies the approval criteria that apply to each applicant's proposal. Staff has analyzed the criteria which are contained in the staff report. The quasi-judicial hearing procedure that the Historic Review Board will follow is set out in state law and the Oregon City Municipal Code. The hearing procedure steps are shown on the Historic Review Board website. Public testimony will be called on in the order it was requested in advance of the meeting. If you have not emailed city staff at planning@orcity.org to request to speak and would like to testify, please raise your virtual or physical hand when I ask if there are others in the audience who would like to participate. For the public record, please begin all testimony stating your name and city of residence. If you would like to receive a copy of the notice of decision, please state your mailing address and email address. Testimony and evidence should be directed toward the applicable approval criteria. If you believe other criteria apply in addition to those addressed in the staff report, identify and discuss those criteria and explain how and why you believe they apply to the application under consideration. Any person may submit written material while the public record is open on each application. Any written materials received by the city staff during the time period in which the record is open will be placed in the record. Written materials submitted during the public hearing must be presented to the city staff in order to become part of the record. If a person intends for PowerPoint presentations, reports, pictures, or other exhibits used in their oral testimony to be placed in the record, copies must be submitted to the city staff while the record is open. If they are not given to staff, they will not be included in the record. Any person wishing a continuance to present additional evidence and testimony or to keep the record open to respond to new evidence must make that request before the public testimony portion of the hearing is closed. If the Historic Review Board makes a decision with which you disagree, any issue that you may wish to appeal must have been raised on the record for the consideration of the City Commission or the Land Use Board of Appeals or both. Without raising the issue on the record with sufficient detail and accompanied by statements or evidence that the city and all parties can respond to the issue will not be deemed appealable to the City Commission or the State Land Use Board of Appeals. In addition, the failure of the applicant to raise constitutional or other issues relating to proposed conditions of approval with sufficient detail to allow the local government or its designee to respond to the issue, precludes an action for damages in circuit court. Now we will open the record for Oregon City file number GLUA 2204 and HR 2201, historic review for modification to HRB decision HR 2004. I will now ask each Historic Review Board member if they have had any ex parte contacts, conflicts of interest, bias, or any other statements to declare or have visited the site. If there was a site visit, the Historic Review Board must declare what he or she perceived. So Board Member Belknap.
Hi, yeah, I have no conflicts. I have not visited this site this week, but I have been by here a few years ago. So I'm familiar with this area and this site, but not this week.
Thank you. Board Member Edgar.
I visited the site today while I was walking my dog, walked up and took a look at the property, and I own an adjoining parcel of land, kind of kitty corner. My property's on Fifth Avenue, but it's in the same block. I have not had any contact with the people. However, I do know the property and know the history of it for a long time, and it's as being part of the neighborhood association, and for years the land use chair of the neighborhood association.
Thank you. I have also visited the site, and I have no conflicts of interest or ex parte contact. Does anyone in the audience wish to question any of the Historic Review Boarders about these disclosures? Hearing none, we will now commence with the planning staff report.
Thank you, Board Member Ferry. Again, I'm Kelly Reed, planner with Oregon City, and I wrote the staff report and recommendation for this item. So I will summarize that tonight, and I will share my screen here. Okay, does everyone see that first slide? Okay, great. So this is HR 2201. This is a revision to a plan that was approved in 2020 by the Historic Review Board. It's for a property in the Conema National Register District. So this property is a 10,000 square foot lot on 4th Avenue and unimproved Hedges Street. So it's in the historic overlay, geologic hazard overlay zone, and the Willamette River Greenway. So there are a lot of codes and standards to meet here, some of which are conflicting. So it's a challenging property to develop. And the applicant has, as you can see, it's quite, the topography is quite steep. Also Conema's historic landslide zone. And the applicant is required to go through review for historic review and geologic hazard review. So they have done both of those. The plans approved through geologic hazard review are slightly different from what was approved by the Historic Review Board. So the applicant is having to come back to the Historic Review Board with those revisions. So here's a photograph from 4th Avenue. I'm not sure if you can see my cursor, but the other perpendicular street here is the unimproved Hedges. So it serves as kind of a wider kind of driveway for the other houses in the area. There's another photo from 4th Avenue. You can see the historic rock wall in the front. So tonight there are a few items that we've added to the record that were not in the agenda packet. In these, the list 1 through 4 have been emailed to the board today. So there's the applicant's tree report, an email from the arborist, a comment from the Development Services Department, a comment from a neighbor, and then the applicant has just advised me that they have some a revised drawing to present to you tonight, so that'll be added to the record. Other documents that are available that may be helpful to add to the record are the staff report for the geologic hazard review for this property, and the geotech report that went with that. And so those are kind of publicly available, but they can be added to the record for this item if the HRB feels that would be helpful. And they can, if this item is continued, then they would be added to the agenda packet in the meantime. So I want to talk about the, as I kind of mentioned before, the condition of approval for the geologic hazard review here. So this condition of approval indicated that a revision or an additional review by the Historic Review Board would likely be required based on the changes to the plan. So here are the two plans. On the left is the plan that was approved in 2020. That includes the single family home and the detached garage in the back corner of the lot with a driveway coming off of hedges leading to that garage. The plan that was, the plans were revised and then submitted for geologic hazard review. And the change was to move the garage from the back corner a little bit up closer towards 4th Avenue next to the house, reorient the garage, so kind of turn it 90 degrees, and mostly maintain the driveway footprint, but extend it a little bit into the area where the garage footprint used to be. In addition, along with the proposal to move the garage footprint, the applicant has indicated that there are 3 additional trees that they're proposing to cut down. And there was tree removal discussed in 2020 at the HRB, and there were conditions of approval related to tree removal that were included in the Historic Review Board's decision. So I'll talk about those and why this tree removal is relevant to that. So here's the design that was reviewed and approved with conditions in 2020. So you can see the front of the house facing 4th Avenue, and then the side of the garage is visible here, and that's tucked back in the back corner of the lot. So today's proposal would bring that garage up closer, turn it, I believe 90 degrees. And so you'd see a different side of it from 4th Avenue, and you'd see a bit of exposed foundation here. So here's the east elevation. You can see the garage kind of placed behind the house. And then today's proposal, the garage moving up kind of in line with the house. So there are a few design guidelines that I want to talk about here. And one is for foundations. You're all familiar with the guideline that talks about covering sections of exposed foundations. That can be accomplished with siding or with landscaping in some cases, anything exceeding 3.5 feet. And then under this guideline, what's not allowed by the guidelines is tall or expansive areas of exposed foundations. There's no numerical value that is included in the guidelines for you to consider tall or not. So that's up to the interpretation of the board. The foundation exposure that is shown in the applicant's plans is 6 feet on the far side, and that's the tallest. It goes down to about 5 feet on the left side, or sorry, on the right side. Another one of the guidelines is about tree removal. So the guidelines call for minimization of tree removal, adjusting the house siting to preserve tree canopy, and clear cutting of properties is not allowed. So some of these trees are in the public right of way in between the property and the pavement of 4th Avenue. So those are these trees up here. So those are actually in the right of way. This tree here that's closer to the garage is a 20-inch oak. It is on the private property. And with the removal of that tree, it appears that all trees over 6 inches are being on the property itself are proposed to be removed. There will still be trees around the property in the right-of-way area. But some of those are, some additional of those are being removed as well, or being proposed to be removed. So the condition of approval that the board applied in 2020 was to preserve the 6 trees that were proposed to be preserved, to get an arborist recommendation on what actions can be taken to protect those trees during construction, and then that the applicant follow those recommendations during construction. I think the board kind of anticipated that, site changes might happen, and that, once an arborist takes a look at the plans, that things might change. So because of that, the way they wrote this condition required the applicant to return to the board with revisions to better achieve tree preservation if it turns out that those 6 trees cannot be preserved. The condition 10 from that decision is again about increasing tree mitigation if there was another tree in the unimproved right-of-way that was going to come down, because that one wasn't on the plan. And then the mitigation, based on the 2020 plan, the mitigation was going to be 6 1.5-inch caliper replacement trees. One other design guideline I want to mention that I didn't put in the written staff report explicitly, but I just want to point it out here based on a question I got. Driveway guidelines. The principles to maintain, locate the side or rear of the primary building. So the applicant has done that. The driveway is behind the house, which is the right place for it. And to maintain historic scale and dimension. Again, there's no numerical value attached to that. Not allowed oversized driveways. So generally oversized driveways are wider than 20 feet. In the historic district, the board might consider something else to be oversized. So again, it's up to the board's interpretation here. So you have 3 options tonight. The first one is to continue the hearing to April 26th, provide direction to the applicant on additional information needed. The record would stay open. And staff recommendation is to do that because there really is a lack of information about the tree removal and whether the construction of whether it's possible to take any actions to preserve some of those trees, even with the garage in the new location that it's proposed. So it's not clear if those trees can be preserved, and if so, how. And I think the other piece of information that the board might find helpful is more information on the grading, the geologic hazard requirements, and why the site plan is better meets the geologic hazard code by putting the garage closer to the street rather than farther away. And whether there are any other alternatives that were considered that would reduce grading and reduce excavation while better meeting the historic design guidelines. So I think, so staff recommends option 1, but the other 2 options are to deny the proposal, close the record, and continue to April 26, 2022 to adopt final findings. The staff report currently doesn't have findings of full set of findings to support denial or approval. So if the board wanted to make a decision tonight, we would still have to come back in April with the final written findings for you to formally adopt. But you could close the record in that case. So that's option 2 and option 3 is to deny or approve, but we'd have to come back anyway. But again, because we have kind of limited information about the trees, I would recommend option 1. Any questions for staff?
Yes. I had sent a question into you asking about comparable garages and buildings that are bungalow style in this Kenema Historic District that we could compare to not only in mass, but when I read the staff report from the city engineer, it talks about that this property needs to be all development or all where the land is dug up or touched in any way must be under 4,000 square feet in total disturbance area. Boy, I tell you what, it sure looks awful close. And on it, even with a 10,000 square foot lot, starting size, this is kind of getting really close. And the engineer says it should be really identified. Again, it's much like the tree removal, and but I have a concern that again this is a house that significantly, to me, appears to be significantly larger in a percentage that's much larger than any historic bungalow house in Kenema, and that's what we compare to. And I think that is a factor that why everything is really, we're putting a very large house on with a very large garage, and we're close to exceeding 4,000 square feet or exceeding it, and that should be that needs to be really looked at again. Whenever we open up a review like this, it is something that can be re-looked at, and particularly in this case, it may require us to look at it. The other thing that I'm looking at in the report from the city engineer is that when 25% of the canopy area is removed, I want to ask, does that include the related canopy area of the unimproved 4th Avenue, where trees are being asked to be removed, because that's all one contiguous tree canopy through there. And I'm just want to get clarification on that, and that could be part of what could occur with a continuance, where we could get more clarity on the total canopy that is being removed, because we're awfully close again, and that makes it difficult. And I have looked at the lot before, obviously, with my neighbors, and so I just like to see what it is, and it's part of the clarification of what we should be doing. The driveway is extending all along that one side of the hillside and going clear back along through there. And there's a kind of like a high spot clear in the back. That's where the garage was originally going to be. And that is going to require a great deal of recontouring right there. And so I look at it and say, wow, I'm looking at that 4,000 square feet of land disturbance. And I'm saying, this is, and no one can really identify where we are on it. So I'm hoping that that can be identified. Thank you.
Thanks, Paul, for the questions. So a couple things. You brought up, the what's the scope of the board's review here? Are we considering the house, the whole site, the design again, or are we just looking at the changes that were proposed? So typically, with a modification or with an application for a modification, basically to a previously approved plan, the board will focus only on what the changes are, and the design that has been approved that's not proposed to change, that part of the project would kind of not be the topic of the board's review. Now, it is at the board's discretion to consider the overall design and plan. I think if the board wanted to do that, you'd have to make findings as to why the previous decision needs to be revisited. The staff's, so the design of the house was approved in 2020 with conditions, and there's nothing that's proposed to be changed about the house. So my staff report and recommendation focuses only on the garage and the tree removal. Now, the garage design has also not changed, but the facade that faces the street is a different facade. So I mentioned that in the staff report, and find that it's a simple design that kind of there are no issues with the design really when it comes to the guidelines of elements of the garage. It's really more about the placement. But if the board, because that is a different side of the garage that's facing the right of way, that's absolutely something the board can consider as to, what that design, what impact that design has, on the district and on the street. You also asked about the 25% tree canopy. My understanding is that is a threshold for review. So if someone's removing 25% tree canopy, that requires geologic hazard review before they can do that. So it's not a limit. It's just a review threshold. So the tree removal on the site was, for the most part, and not, it has changed a little bit, but the most of the tree removal that is occurring here was included in the geologic hazard application and was accounted for. So that has been approved with conditions, and the engineers that reviewed that took that tree removal into account. What I don't know, Paul, and what we can ask the city engineer to clarify is whether the trees in the right of way are included in that analysis. I am not sure how they define that. I did ask the city engineer if they were able to attend tonight, and they could not. So unfortunately, we don't have the benefit of the engineering staff being here to answer questions, but they did offer to provide more information if the board has specific questions, and we have a continuance that they can provide that information in the meantime. So That's one of the questions that I can make sure to keep on the list for the engineer.
One last question on the trees is on the authenticity of this one report that came in. You got a document in from the arborist saying that they were not the author of a report that came before you, came in. And I think that that's another question that would be part of the arborist, or of the reason why we need more clarity in continuancing this hearing.
Sorry, I'm not sure I understand the question, or was there a question?
There was the authenticity of the arborist report was brought into question in the documents you sent.
That's correct, yeah.
Are there any other questions for city staff? Okay, if there are no other questions, we will move into the public testimony. I would just like to, as a reminder, we will invite the applicant up first, and they will have up to 15 minutes to describe their application. After that, we will have 5 minutes, up to 5 minutes for representatives of organized neighborhood associations, government agencies, or other incorporated public interest organizations. There will be up to 3 minutes for individuals. And then after that, there will be 5 minutes for the applicant's rebuttal. So we will invite the applicant to speak. Again, you will have up to 15 minutes, although you don't need to use it all. And if you could please state your name and your place of residence, please.
Hi, I'm Mila Izerski, Oregon City, and I would like Bo Robinson to do the speaking on my behalf. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me? Okay, thank you. So is there, Kelly, would it be possible to put the most recent site plan up?
Sure.
Thank you.
Does that work?
Yeah, that'll work. Although I got a little thing right in front of it.
Sorry.
Shoot, I don't know what that. Give subtitles a try. So, okay.
Oh, sorry, is that blocking you?
Oh, is that on yours?
Yeah. Are you guys seeing that little box?
Yes.
That says give
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
I don't know why Zoom does this. Sorry about that.
No
Let me
problem.
see if I can we'll just have to do it a different way.
Oh, there we go. Okay. So just a couple things with kind of the way the process has sort of worked. And there's been a lot of meetings, and so I might be getting some of them kind of mixed with each other, but a few things that we did, we changed floor elevations. We actually brought the entire house towards the south, away from Fourth, to get more of it out of the 35% grade area, which is kind of that salmon colored area, which part of that, and then it was also recommended to us from the engineering staff that it would be better for the site conditions to move the garage to this location. It was strongly recommended to us, so that's what we did. And it certainly does reduce the overall amount of cut and fill. For the property, and its own other problems, but part of it is with the house moving further to the south, it doesn't really allow access to, if we push the garage to where it was before, the access gets cut off because of the proximity of the house, because we're also recommending the house is far south. So those things sort of helped push things the direction that they are. As far as the exposed wall on the 4th Street side of the garage, part of why it's taller than the original application garage, part of that is just the fact that we had proposed to do fill on that side to create kind of a benched area, flat area for kind of a yard area. And then our correspondence with engineering, we did everything we could to remove the amount of cut and fill. We really tried everything we could within reason to minimize all of that. And so we didn't go back and propose a fill area behind the garage that would reduce the height of it, because that would have introduced a lot more fill into the area. So part of the reason they're different isn't because of the location of the garage. I mean, part of it is because of the location. But part of it is just the fact that we're not proposing to do any fill and retaining behind it. I did a couple quick exterior elevations for Mila. One proposal would just be to simply just put siding on that portion of the garage. I believe at one point in the historic process, it was recommended to not make buildings look like multiple stories. It would be better to put some sort of trellis type material on the exposed foundations for planting to kind of cover it. So I believe that's what was actually being shown there. But personally, I like the idea of just running the siding down closer to grade. I think it's a lot better because it just kind of makes, it's not so tall that it seems inappropriate, in my opinion, anyways. I'm not gonna say we were forced into moving the garage, but it was kind of seemed like the consensus is that would help this whole thing get approved. So that's what we've done from the very beginning of this entire process, is listen to everybody repeatedly and continue to change things over and over again to try to meet everybody's expectations, I guess. That's all we've done, is try to listen to what's been recommended and then follow suit by changing things to meet those as best we can. Just for the record, the square footage, development square footage is only the 4,000 square foot limitation is to areas over 25% grade. So it's not based on the 10,000 square foot lot, but those areas. I'm not sure what else to add to that. In many ways, the original garage location was probably more convenient from a practical use standpoint. But this particular design does certainly minimize some of the cut and fill, which was. Not sure I have anything more to add to that.
I have a copy of that plan that you sent with the siding pulled all the way down, if you wanted me to display that.
Sure, that'd be great, thank you. Yeah, and we can do that a couple different areas. Oh, sorry.
Sorry about that.
No problem. When we do our final engineered plan, it might make more sense to actually do suspended garage floor, similar to a project we did down the street. Also minimize the amount of fill.
Lost sound.
We lost your sound on the last part of what you said, Bo.
Oh, okay. I was just saying that there's two different ways that we can accomplish that. We might end up doing a joisted floor system for the garage floor, which will help reduce the amount of fill again. And so it wouldn't even be an exposed foundation potentially. It might be more of a actual pony wall. We did something similar on just about 5 or 6 houses down a few years ago.
We're losing you.
Oh, I'm not talking.
All right.
I don't really have, oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, no, keep going.
No, I think I kind of tried to communicate the reason that things changed and, hopefully that explains why we got to where we are right now with the design. Mila has anything else to add? Sorry.
Well, thank you. Do any board members have any questions for the applicant?
If I could just say, I like it better with the siding all the way down. It eliminates any question about the height of the wall. And that's appropriate to me.
I do have a question. I'm wondering, did you, if the HRB approved plan was the original HRB approved plan, if that was submitted to Geohazard and then there was a change based on what they said, or was
I believe so. Yeah, I think we did like a pre-app.
Yes,
Remember right? Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah. That is correct. Bo is correct.
Okay. Because it would seem to me that up in the back where the original garage was proposed, that sort of flat area, that would have sort of been less intrusive into the site.
Much higher, that corner is much higher than where the floor elevation of the house and the garage need to be. So even though there's a little bit of a bench up in that corner, but it jumps up quite a bit, right at that what was the southeast corner. So the only way we could get it to work was to actually cut a majority of that section of ground out to get the floor elevation of the garage where it needs to be. Because otherwise the garage would have to be maybe 7 feet higher than the floor elevation of the house. It wouldn't work for the driveway and all of that sort of stuff.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any more questions?
Yeah, all of the area, according to what I read from the engineer in disturbance, so everything virtually from the property line where the driveway is, all the way cutting away the back area, all the way down to where the garage is, and all of the property, all virtually from the property line to the front of the house and over to the side. It sure looks, it's not just the dimensions of the buildings themselves. And if I do tree removal, I'm also cutting into a lot of area. So, and the way I read the engineer saying, any place where the shovel goes in and disturbs the land, is part of the 4,000 square feet. And this is one of those things I would love to see this clarified within the continuance.
Okay. So if there's no more questions, we'll move on to other public testimony. Do we have any other public comments on this application? All right, hearing none. Kelly, could you clarify for me, do we move into board deliberation if we are thinking we might do a continuance, or is that part of board deliberation?
Yeah, you can move into board, you can kind of close the
Public hearing.
well, yeah, you can close kind of the testimony part and be in your deliberations now.
All right, so I'll close the public testimony part, and we can move into board deliberations. There were, I don't know if it'd be helpful, but there were 3 things that Kelly sort of proposed. So we could, for options for the board tonight, we could, it looks like we could continue to April 26th to provide direction to the applicant for additional information and keep the record open. We can 2, deny the proposal, close the record, and continue to April 26th to adopt final findings. Or we can 3, approve the proposal with conditions, close the record, and continue to April 26th. It sounds to me like board member Edgar is interested in option number 1. Is that correct, Paul?
Yes, it is. Also, within these considerations, I still have high concerns that there was an error in the judgment in the previous ruling on this building. I believe that it exceeds any known bungalow house in all of Kenema that is a historic and contributing house by almost double the size. If in fact that assumption is true, then it should, I would just like to have that clarified. Is there anything in any house, in bungalow house design in Kenema, that can be referenced that is within 50% of the gross size of this house? And if that's a correct assumption, then there was potentially an error in judgment previously. And I just think that that should be authenticated by a inventory of bungalow houses in Kenema that are contributing, so as that we could have a comparative review of that. And that could occur at the next, with a continuance. But I still believe that that's an important factor. If we're going to maintain the integrity of this historic district, we must be in compliance with the building guidelines and with the code. And if that was looked over in the past, it's now, when it brings it back, it's open for review. And I just believe that it should be looked at.
Board member Belknap.
Thank you. Yeah, I have some similar concerns as board member Edgar. Looking over this, I was not on the board when this was approved, and I was actually very surprised at this design when I was looking over it in preparation for this meeting. The massing of this proposed home does not seem appropriate to Kenema, even with the originally proposed design, in my opinion. And these changes that are now proposed don't actually seem to like mitigate ground disturbance. If anything, I feel like moving that structure makes it feel even more imposing in the district. And the fact that this approval was given based on the preservation of these trees, and now these are part of the proposed change, along with the email we received regarding the arborist report, is very concerning to me. So overall, I do not think this complies with the Kenema district that relies on no ground or little ground disturbance and mature trees. Those trees are a contributing resource for the community, and that is a heavily forested lot. And they're taking out the biggest trees that are present and leaving, I believe it's just mostly small maples, which are not resilient to climate change. So they probably won't be a resource for long for the community. I would be strongly leaning towards number 2 after thorough review of this, in my opinion.
I do echo similar concerns with my fellow board members. I would be interested in a continuance, option number 1, just to hear more information. But I do agree with both of you on some of these points. I'd love to hear more from the city engineer. I'd love to know more about the geohazard review. I'd love to have an arborist come take a look at the trees. Aquila?
Thank you. I'm sorry to interrupt your deliberations, and a quick introduction. My name is Aquila Hurd-Ravitch. I'm the Community Development Director for Oregon City. And I would like to, if you do vote to continue this, I think Kelly and I will want to check in with our assistant city attorney, because I'm not positive. In fact, I'm fairly sure that we cannot reopen a previously approved land use decision if it was fully closed and appeal periods passed and all of that. I don't know that for sure, so I'd like to check in, and perhaps she can be present to kind of answer that question. But my opinion is that your review at this point is kind of a narrow focus. So, and if you want to expand it, I think we'll need to just check in and see if that's available to you. Thanks.
Would like that.
Okay, thank you. Had something and it disappeared. I guess given that in our discussions with the applicant, they talked about the fact that the house has also been moved slightly to the south to take advantage of the steeper cut. I'm wondering if that part of the move, is that something, since it's different than the original plans, that we need to approve of, or is it simply just the garage and the driveway?
Would you like me to answer that?
Yeah, I'm so
Okay.
sorry.
So yes, the house has been slightly pulled back away from 4th Avenue. And, there are also probably some design elements on the house that have changed in response to HRB conditions of approval from 2020. There were a lot of conditions on this application. And so I know that there have been some tweaks to the design to meet those conditions. And you are correct that the house has been pulled back. And I think that, I guess, I don't know if there was a condition of, I don't think that there was a condition of approval from the HRB in 2020 specifically to do that. But I think it appears that, you know, there are fewer retaining walls now as well. And it's farther away from the street, which I think is a plus from an HRB perspective in general. So that's not something that we, on its own, it's probably not something that we would send back to the HRB. We would consider that a de minimis change that doesn't have a greater impact on the historic district. And so that would be something that we just approve at the building permit stage at a staff level. But the change in the garage was not, you know, went beyond that staff level. Yeah.
Thank you. Yes, Board Member Edgar.
Based upon this, I would like I think that our recommendation by our building director, community director, is good. I think if we have the city attorney look at this, that will help us move in one time. And with a continuance, this could all be brought together at one time. And I would that would be good. And the arborist reports and making sure that we've got all of the I's dotted and the T's crossed. And then we move. Then we can make a vote. Thank you.
Okay. So do we make a motion for a continuance?
Move for continuance to date certain of what is the date, Kelly?
April
The next
26th.
What?
April 26th.
I can't hear you. Yeah.
Sorry, April 26th.
Date certain to April 26 for continuance. Thank you.
I'll second that.
Okay, I'll call the roll. Board Member Belknap,
Aye.
Board Member Edgar,
Aye.
Board Member Ferry.
Aye.
I just want to make sure that the applicant has clear direction on what information to bring back. So just to summarize, an arborist report regarding the trees and what their condition is, and how those will be impacted by this plan. Does that reflect what the board wants to see?
Additionally, the make sure the ground disturbance, are we under 40,000 square feet of ground disturbance?
Okay, now that is a standard for geologic hazard review, and it's not a guideline for historic review. But I think we can bring more information on the geologic hazard part of it, and we can add the geotech report to the record as well as the staff report from that. And I will invite the city engineer to come in April. I'm not sure if he's going to be available, but we'll try to get as much information in writing as an alternative from him.
Are we going to get any assurance of the authenticity of the arborist report that we are going to receive? Can we get it directly from an arborist, and can it be an arborist who is going to be told that they will not be getting the work to take down the trees? They don't have an incentive to lean one way. I feel like we just need real transparency there.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, so Is there anything else that anybody wants to add? If not, I think we move on to other business, close the public testimony, or close the public hearing and move on to our next items in the other business category.
Yes.
Okay. So number 2 on our list is a preservation grant. It is PG 22-02, the 22-03 and 22-04. These are preservation grant requests for wood window repair at 404 Washington Street. And then Kelly, I just, from a procedural standpoint, do we invite the applicant up to speak? Do we time these or?
I think it's pretty informal usually. Actually, the applicant isn't present, and I know that he mentioned that this was around kids' bedtime. So if you would like to, I think the design advice applicant is here, so you could switch those agenda items around in hopes that the grant applicant will join us.
I think that's reasonable. So we should move on then to design advice for an addition to a non-designated structure at 117 High Street.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I am definitely present and accounted for.
So,
I can just preface this, and I'll share my screen as well with the materials provided. And then Sabrina, if you don't mind, then we can just hand it over to the applicant to kind of talk about it. Okay. So design advice, again, as you know, is a way for applicants to get some feedback on their designs before, while they're in the design process and before they submit an application to the HRB. Design advice is non-binding, and the advice comes from individual board members and not from the board as a whole. So this project, this is a non-designated structure in the McLaughlin district at 117 High Street. And it appears that the size of the addition would pass that threshold for review to be reviewed as a new construction in the district. The existing square footage of the house is pretty small, so the addition ends up being a pretty large percentage of that. So it crosses that 30% threshold. And it would come to you as new construction in the McLaughlin district. And so with that, I will share my screen if I can get it. Chris, feel free to tell me which page you want me to show while you're talking.
Sure. Well, I think the only page ahead of this is the brief narrative, which I think you did a good job of wrapping up. Yeah, basically, it's just a very constrained site that me and my family are living in. The plot that our property is on High Street, and The whole area is characterized by just these basalt rocky shelves, which make construction very difficult. But at the same time, it presents interesting challenges that we can respond to, I think, in creative ways. And that's what I'm trying to get y'all's input in on. So what we're looking at now is just a plan of the property, and all the colored area is that's my house. That's all of it. It's kind of teeny tiny. There's 3 of us in there, and we're desperate to expand. The main house itself, which you can kind of see in the existing, is about 700 square feet, and it's single story. And what we're proposing is to build off into the side yard, which is on kind of the north side of the property. And we want to build the main addition in basically where it's the easiest spot to develop out in our yard, which is far against the property boundary to the north, and then bridge the distance with the main property with a enclosed space, which we're classifying as a breezeway because it's going to be partially open seasonally. So we can move on to the next page, please. Yeah, so this is what my house looks like. You can see in the bottom right. It's an interesting site because it steps up gradually on these kind of rocky terraces from the south to the north, so that the foundation on the south side is significantly lower than the space that we're building in the yard. So that condition kind of forces us to go up and go out. And that had some implications, I think, on the roof line and just the overall size of the proposal. This is just a render that I made in modeling software. It's all just conceptual. It's not highly exact, but I think it conveys the idea well enough. Next slide, please. And then I have similar views, or yeah, just from the front of the property. Now, I want to point out, actually on that last slide, that I do not mean to change the facade of the existing building at all. All I'm looking to do is build the addition off onto the raised area in the yard, which actually is pretty occluded from the street and the sidewalk. It's because of its height advantage and because of the 6-foot fence that we have. Next slide, please. Just the same thing, different angle. And then next slide. And then if we kind of scooch up past the fence, this is a rough idea of what I'd like. I don't want anybody to think that I'm committed to details here. I basically just filled it in to kind of give the idea some character. But the middle part is the breezeway, which is relatively narrow. It's essentially just the width of a hallway going to the bedroom suite addition, which is just a bedroom, bathroom with an office loft as well. And what I'd really like to poke y'all's brain about is whether it's possible, first of all, to exceed the 30% threshold in this case, given the constraints, and how much room I actually have, since it is a highly constrained space. I would love to exceed the 5-foot offset on the side yards. I know that exceptions are made there. I don't know what conditions are needed to meet there, but yeah, I'm interested in what you have to say about the matter. And then we just have one more kind of aerial perspective. And yeah, that is what we are proposing. We haven't taken it very far yet, just because we wanted to run the idea by the HRB first. Yeah, before we committed to anything that we might have to reverse on.
Great.
I'll clarify one thing just to start. The second question you had, Chris, about the offset. We would use the term setback. So I think there's a 5-foot setback. And the board can approve design with a preservation incentive, which is a fancy term for basically a setback exception. If the board finds that like a smaller setback is more appropriate for the site or for the district, then that can be approved and it overrules the base zoning required setbacks.
So it's only in the interest of preserving the historical integrity of the site, like if it's absolutely needed, or is there some flexibility there?
Well, it's kind of up to the board to interpret whether a reduced setback would better accomplish, protecting the historic character of the district. There are also opportunities for variances for setbacks as well. And that's a separate process that the board wouldn't be involved in. So either way, the board could approve what's proposed, and then you might be required to get a variance as well, depending on how it plays out.
And I also want to point out that by trade, I'm a landscape architect. And more often than not, I work with architects that kind of design their homes as just an island in and of itself that doesn't necessarily respond to the site conditions. And a big drive for me is that I try and respond to and celebrate the very unique terrain of this site. And this is kind of clunky, but there's actually a very interesting rocky outcropping kind of right in the middle of that north yard, which is one of the reasons why we're reaching around it, because we want to preserve that rather than just, push out the side of the house. Really, the idea is to kind of showcase that and create a courtyard space. So that is definitely a big part of the motivation.
I know this site very well. I live in the neighborhood, and I could tell that looking at this design. Like, it was very obvious. I was like, okay, when I first saw this like come up, I was like, oh no, I love that place. It has the really cool basalt. Like, I was really worried about what I was going to see happening to that rock, and I was relieved to see what you had done to work around that. So,
oh, good. Thank you.
Yeah, I noticed that right away.
Yeah, it's a crazy, unique place that we just kind of looked into.
It's really, really cool, all that rock. So what you're proposing here, I have a question. Are you proposing building that 2-story master, primary suite structure up to the property line, or is there any sort of setback? What are you showing us here?
Well, as it's shown, I'm providing a 5-foot buffer on the back and the side of it. And I would like to extend that as far as possible, just to make the space more, well, livable, really. And I don't know if we should necessarily classify that as a 2-story structure. I don't know if there's any kind of in-between classification, but we're just looking to build a half wall up above, and that's going to be a loft space, because we're really trying to do what we can to not exceed the height of the primary structure.
Great. No, thank you for clarifying that. Yes, that's the structure I meant, just in comparison to the breezeway portion that is a clear 1-story.
Gotcha.
So, so if you increase, if you go into the setbacks, would you be, you'd be just extending the wall out, not, you'd be extending back and extending out to the side. Okay, just increasing the width of the sort of gable portion of the addition, as well as extending back, making the breezeway wider.
Possibly, mostly we're interested in the bedroom suite,
Bedroom suite.
expanding there. I mean, if we can for the breezeway, that's fine. That's just a lower priority.
Understood.
But just by a rough calculation, we could gain another 50 square feet in the footprint if we just go another 3 feet in either direction, to the north and the west.
Well, I would just like to say that I really like what you've proposed. I really like the design of the breezeway. I like the clerestory windows. I like the exposed rafters. I think it has a nice relationship with the roof over the entryway to your house. And I also like the sort of massing of your addition. I don't think it's overwhelming in any way. I like the 1.5 story height. I did have a concern about the windows, and I don't know if those are just placement or a place marker, but I don't know if Kelly, if you can go to show the front of the addition at all. So I just think that since your house is classified as a bungalow, and these windows, particularly the arched 2nd story window, just would not be found on a bungalow house. And I feel like maybe if you could just maybe find some more compatible window styles with the bungalow style.
Oh, sure.
That'd be great. And then I'm just curious also, it looks like the entire side of your house that the breezeway comes up against has been, it looks like there are 2 windows there, and then a door with a little overhang, little porch roof on the actual house.
Oh yeah, on the existing.
On the existing structure. I'm wondering, are those going to be removed? In the mock-up, it shows that that's just a flat wall.
Well, for sure, I think we would have to remove 1 window for sure. The door could potentially stay. Also, what we're not seeing in this in the proposed here is the smaller window towards the front of the house. That would likely be replaced, but we could replace it to match. Really, that whole face of the house is just up in the air. We can go either way with that.
I would like to, I went back to the house this afternoon to walked up the alleyway and took a look back through there, and was just trying to relook at the site. I have concerns with the height of the office space on top. I think that it creates a different flow or of how the houses, a lot of the, well, I'll call the mill worker houses that are along that stretch of High Street have been. And to me, it's kind of like I would have loved to see maybe the breezeway maybe expanded, how that could be done, but where the roof line comes up more towards the peak of the existing roof, or goes under it and then comes across, so that that there is less disturbance to the original house, and there is a mini peak underneath it that comes up and comes across. But if there was a way to mitigate needing to go up to the 2nd story, and that's what I would that to me, I'm concerned that it's more than 1.5 stories in appearance from the road. I love the big rocks, the outcropping. I could see back on the back north side of this, it looked like a historic rock wall that exists, that goes down. Is that right on the property lines?
That may be referring to my neighbor's rock wall, which is just don't know if I would call it historic, but it's just an informal dry stack wall.
Okay.
I'm not entirely sure when it was built.
What the origin of it is, but it looked like it had been there for quite a while. In any event, as far as getting exceptions for setbacks, to me, that's a good mitigation if we could do that, but soften. If you need an office space upstairs, if I had a shed dormer coming off the back, but where I got greater utilization of the upstairs, but bringing the roof line down, it just looks too massively sticking up in it, where it appears to be just out of proportion with the existing structure and other structures that are nearby that are contributing. And there was some way that could be mitigated, and I'm less concerned with the setbacks, far less concerned. In fact, if whatever we could do, and if there's a way that you could, I see when you did that aerial view looking down, I could see the big rock and how far it protrudes into your kind of your patio area right there that you're proposing. And that, I know that that rock is there, but if you can get close to it and still have living and working space around it, whatever you can do, if you can do it, but that the height of that of your master bedroom suite is, to me, and skylights. Yeah, the skylights are, again, it's stepping into more modern. The siding should be matching. The windows should have parallel matching context so as that they have some degree of look and feel. Siding, idealistically, should have a similar look and feel of siding and the lap siding. But what you're proposing is good. I'd like to see it not as high. I think if you could expand the breezeway and make some of that into office space or something, but I'm just trying to make it not stand out as in something that makes it a little bit, the compatibility issue, more of an issue to me.
Oh,
Thank
yeah, I hear you. And I can immediately respond to that and say that I think that some shed dormers on either side of that proposed roof would be a nice, elegant solution, because it would replace the windows that don't seem to be a popular choice. And I think that we could easily lower the roof, even just a couple of feet, I think would make a big difference given the proportions. So yeah, I actually kind of prefer dormers. I did not include those because I did not consider whether or not, well, rather, I wasn't sure how well it would be received given the fact that there are no existing dormers. But in the neighborhood context, there's yeah, plenty of examples.
Yes. And by the way, my wife said she loves your color.
Yeah. Yeah, people either love it or hate it. More love than hate, though.
Yes, good.
All right, do we have any more comments?
Do you have any other specific questions for us that you want moving forward with your design tweaks?
Yeah, well, the opinions that I've heard expressed so far is that the setback isn't such a big concern. I'm just curious what kind of difference is actually allowable here. So I'm currently showing 5 feet setback. What's the maximum that I can actually push it, do you think?
Speaking just personally, I would be inclined to be okay with like a 3-foot setback for sure, because I know that that's a setback for like smaller ADU structure additions. And this is almost like, you know, the feel of it is almost kind of that feel. So I would be very comfortable with a 3-foot with that structure personally.
Yeah.
Cool. Excellent.
Okay.
Cool. Well, thank you all so much for your input. Really
Well,
appreciate it.
Thank you so much for bringing this before us.
You bet.
Thank you.
Yeah. So it doesn't appear that our applicant for the grants has shown up.
Do we need them to be here to help them restore their windows? It seems like what they want is pretty clearly outlined in their application.
I don't think it's up to you. You know, you can move forward without the applicant present if you would like to. And, you know, I'm happy to give my staff report as we normally do.
Board member Edgar, you have your hand raised.
I agree with, let's just move ahead, do the staff report.
Okay, staff report.
Okay. So we have a grant request for wood window repair at 404 Washington. It's a corner lot in the McLaughlin district on Washington, at the corner of 4th and Washington. The windows, it seems like most of the windows proposed for repair actually face the streets, so they are highly visible. The applicant provided 2 bids, but said that the second bid, he had the amount, but not a copy of the detailed bid. So the only bid that is provided in detail is the one from Jeffrey Franz. And it's basically full window restoration and replacing the sash cords and all that. So normally, so the applicant has kind of split this up into 3 different grant requests, which is that can be done, and it has been done in the past. But usually in the past, when it's done, it's a property might be doing like 3 different types of work, and they would request a grant for porch repair and request a grant for window repair, and they're 2 separate projects. In this case, it's all window repair. So there are kind of 2 ways the board could look at this one. You can consider it as 3 separate grant requests for $625 each. Or you can say, well, hey, this is actually kind of one project. with 6 windows. And we are happy to award, the $1,000 grant that we would normally award. So you're kind of welcome. Either one is reasonable. We do have a maximum amount that people can request, so that there's a limit and we don't have folks kind of monopolizing the grant program. And that is, I think it's $3,000 over a 2-year period is the maximum. So they're not going beyond the maximum by, submitting this grant request, and they would still be held to that limit. The other thing I'll add is that I think I included in the packet our grant tracking log, because we've awarded 2 grants already this round, and both of them were more expensive projects where we said, if there's money left over at the end, you can have some additional grant funding. So we've done that already for two grants. So I'll just share that so you can see it. Try and make it a little bit bigger. Okay. So we awarded $1,000 potential for another $750 for a window repair grant in the fall. And then for this last project at 204 Jefferson, we awarded $1,000. It can receive additional $2,250 if not awarded to others. So what we've got left is, we kind of 3. So this amount requested now is $1,825, and you can choose to award all of that in 3 grants, or just $1,000, or kind of whatever, anything in between or less, based on what you think. So I think, and I did some number crunching when I was writing this report, but I didn't include that in this tracking log. But if you want me to, I can do that again and let you know how much would be available for the other folks if you were to award all of the grant requested here today.
Oh, are you saying that we could, historically, we've been awarding $1,000 and on the other preceding ones?
That's the typical amount, yeah.
Yeah, and yet, which I'm all in favor of doing with this right now. And that the remaining part then could be applied to the other grant applicant. When is the year annual or the closure of this grant period?
Yeah, so we it's June 30th. So starting July 1st, we'll have another round with another $5,000.
Okay.
And there may be, we might get a couple more grant requests before the end of the fiscal year, but we don't know.
I would be inclined to award them the same amount with the same escalation, like as we did to the first project that was listed that was of a very similar scale and dollar amount. That just seems kind of, in all fairness, and if there's money left over, we can divide it up proportionately amongst those jobs.
I would agree with that. If we've already sort of said all extra goes to the last grant request that we awarded, are we no longer able to give excess because we've sort of promised it already?
It looks like we've promised an escalation amount to both of those projects. So the first one was an additional $750, and the large project was an additional $2,500 or something, or $1,500 or something.
But I think that may have been the remaining.
Right. So that adds up to 5,000, right? If you if this grant requests weren't turned in at all, you'd be awarding the full 5,000 between the 2 previous grant requests. So for example, if you awarded $1,000 for this grantee, you'd give the first request 1,750, this request 1,000, and then the one in the middle that was like the $20,000 project would get $2,250 because that would be what's left.
Is there a way, Kelly, at the end of the year that instead of making sort of decisions about awarding extras, that we could revisit grants and award to, just divide up what's left depending on what other jobs might warrant? I mean, rather than trying to sort of pay it forward or whatever.
Like we might just surprise you with extra money at the end of the cycle.
I doubt that'll happen, but yes, I think we could do that. I think that the tricky part is that our program is very clear that it's for, we award money for work that is, we can't award funds for work that is already completed or underway already. So, which I think that that's a rule that we made up. So that rule could change. But I think if we just make sure that we use some wording when we award, the original grant, saying that additional funding may be allocated to this as determined by HRB at the end of the year or something, but I don't see why we couldn't do that.
I like that wording.
I like that too.
Great.
Well, I would move that we approve the $1,000 and that there could be additional funds available at the termination if at that time, and a determination will be made at the end of the calendar grant year.
Is that even possible, Kelly, since we've sort of promised that money?
Yeah, I mean, I think the way I was viewing it is it's kind of like first come, first serve. So, if there's additional funding at the end of the year, then the first person in the door where you said they could have what's left, they would get first dibs, and then you move on to the next one. And so if that is how we do it this year, because of, the way we've been kind of moving, then this grantee that we're looking at today would end up with just 1,000 and there wouldn't be anything left over.
Yeah.
But, for next cycle, I will make sure, internally that it's okay to do it differently. And then we can kind of change how we manage this.
That's good to know that that's how that's interpreted, because I guess I read it differently as like, okay, this first job is $1,000, you have a potential additional $750. This job, we're giving you $2,000 with the potential, or $1,000 with the potential additional $2,500, and this job, this third one, maybe $1,000 with an additional $750 or whatever. And then if there's obviously not going to be $1,400 plus $2,500 at the end, but maybe we divide it up proportionately on what we promised. Like that's more how I was viewing we were going to do it. I don't know, that maybe that's totally wrong, but that was my own personal interpretation.
Yeah, I think that we're forging new territory here because in the past when we've done this, we've just been lucky that we've only, awarded it to one grantee. And so it wasn't really an issue.
Totally fair.
Is grandfathering of those previous wordings going to dictate what we do? And whenever you make it a commitment or an agreement, you have to honor it. That's the way it is. And I would like to move that we approve this $1,000 here. And if there's some left over, we'll let Kelly, being our genius here to help us with any of the other people. But let's just get $1,000 and get that grant part approved, and it equals what everyone else gets.
All right. So let's see.
Was that a motion?
Is that a motion? Board member?
Yes.
Egbert? I second that.
Okay, board member Belknap,
Hi.
board member Edgar,
Aye.
and board member Ferry.
Aye.
Great.
So we have, pardon me, I have just two other orders on our business. So they are the draft minutes for April 27th, 2021, and the draft minutes for May 25th, 2021. Did anyone have any thoughts about them or see any differences as to what's written? No, me neither. I didn't see anything. So Kelly, I apologize. Do we make a motion to approve those? Or just say,
Yeah, I think you can approve them as a batch of two if you want, or you can do it separately.
okay,
Move that we approve the batch.
I'll second that.
Great, board member Belknap,
Hi.
board member Edgar,
Aye.
board member Ferry.
Aye. Are there any communications that anyone has?
I will be in touch with you all over email to confirm our award, the Ruth Powers Preservation Award. So I thank you for your nominations and ideas that you sent me. And I think there's I didn't get much. And so I think the one that I did get that hasn't won an award before is really a great choice. So I will share that with you all over email. And if there are no objections, then I think we'll move forward with that. And that'll be awarded at the city commission meeting, the first city commission meeting in May, I believe. And we will have, thank you for filling out the homework or emailing me with your homework for OC 2040. I will, I'm going to be forwarding that on to Christina this week. And I think some of you had very similar comments. There was nothing really conflicting. So I don't think there's any reason for us to kind of talk together about it unless you would like to at the next meeting. And then let's see, we'll have another set of homework for you. Lucky you, related to HB 2001 Middle Housing Code. So I think as we have discussed before, the City Commission is going to adopt code amendments for middle housing. The state law that kind of governs this, HB 2001, does not allow cities to exclude these middle housing types in historic districts. So we have, our existing design guidelines will go a long way towards, helping applicants and helping the board and helping staff to understand what's appropriate for middle housing design. But there may be some additional guidelines that we might want to adopt for specifically middle housing types. So like townhomes, duplexes, triplexes, quadplexes, because our guidelines are kind of silent on some of those uses right now. So we will have some homework for you related to that, and then we'll have a work session at our next meeting in April.
I would like to make a comment that I've submitted information on 2001 legislation and or whatever you call it, GU, the one at the Planning Commission, and it was my position as an individual that we should comply with the existing historic codes for historic districts and building guidelines. Yes, yet at the same time, I'm an advocate for minimal housing and lower cost housing. I believe it's critical that we have housing prices that come in below what we currently have. And it prevents many people from being able to afford a house, or puts them into very costly temporary housing or apartments. And I think it's critical that we have more options available if in fact that it leads into a tiny house that can be architecturally correct. I asked Todd Eisling to make comment, and he kind of says, yes, we could make tiny houses appropriate. So as long as they kind of have the look and feel and do not detract, I sometimes we can look at those things, and sometimes we may need to even look at smaller lot sizes that would put houses available where the cost of the property and cost of maybe waiving some SDC fees or some other fee structures, but somehow we have to come up with a way collectively where we can create housing, middle housing, that physically costs less. And that's a question mark, that how to do that means a lot of collective thinking. It's effectively above my pay grade. And I'm asking for everyone to weigh in, because I just, in my heart of hearts, believe we need to come up with something that costs less. Otherwise, it is not middle housing. And how we do that, I think we really need to look at it. It's my opinion. I've tried to write that out and try to be, and I'm not eloquent on everything that I write, but whatever it is, and I'm trying to implore people to open their eyes and thoughts to see if they can come up with ideas as what we can do. Thank you.
Great. I'm looking forward to hearing more about HB 2001. Yeah. So is this the point where I adjourn the meeting, or I hope I haven't bungled through this too badly.
Been great.
I was much more prepared for the really structured public testimony part.
Thanks for leading us.
I'll get better at this.
You did great. Yeah, you did great. Thank you. And thank everyone.
All right, well, I will now adjourn the March 29th Historic Review Board meeting. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.
Thanks, everyone.